bird on a tree. I'm just sitting here. I got time, it's clear to see. From up here, the world seems small. We can sit together. It's so beautiful, you and me. We're meant to be in the great outdoors, forever free.
Hello Zeeblies, today I'm going to sit down and do this Q&A for y'all. I got a lot of really good questions. I am outside, it's a beautiful day and I have better lighting outside than I do inside. So sorry if you hear like birds, or there are some people working on the street, down the street, so sometimes you can hear their equipment. So hopefully it won't be too loud and you'll still be able to hear me. And if I'm looking down, I'm just looking at my phone for the questions. Now, my name is Kelly. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Kelly, and my husband and I have 3 children. We have Savannah, who's 13, Cole, who is 7, and Sydney, who is 5. Okay, so a lot of the questions that I got was like from one person, but multiple questions. So I'm gonna kind of just break them down question by question. So my first question is, do all of my children have EDS or POTS? So my daughters both have EDS. They have been diagnosed. I have been diagnosed with hypermobility syndrome, suspected EDS. I'll get into that a little bit more here in a minute on why I don't have a full diagnosis, but who I have spoken with. As far as my son, he does not have the diagnosis, but in the past couple of years, some things have happened that we suspect he does. So as of right now, the only people who have the official EDS diagnosis is Savannah and Sydney. Okay, this person is asking about dislocations and pain. She said, if you deal with dislocations and pain, do you have any advice to help with them? So Savannah and I both severely suffer from subluxations, which is partial dislocations. Savannah has had a few full dislocations, but we both really deal with subluxations. So for me, when I was a teenager, I cheered. This was way before we knew anything about EDS, and when I would stretch or do the splits and stuff, my hip would feel kind of funny. I would get up, I'd push it back and it would pop. I honestly never thought twice about it. I thought it was normal. Throughout the years, it has created a lot of joint pain, especially in my hips. So for me, unfortunately, I take a lot of ibuprofen. I take ibuprofen on a daily basis. But the other thing I do would be a heating pad, hot baths, and rest, which as a parent sometimes can be very difficult to do. But resting and just accepting that today is going to be a rest day. Yeah, my house may be a mess. Yes, my sink is full of dishes, but my body is struggling today, so it just is what it is. So for me, that's kind of the things I do. Epsom salt baths are kind of a must in our house for Savannah and I. Now, Savannah deals with a lot of subluxations also. Hers are her patella and her hips, her shoulder. She has dislocated her shoulder before, and so she deals with a lot with those joints. And for her, because she's young, I don't want her to be on a lot of ibuprofen. Obviously the doctor doesn't want to, she doesn't want to. Like, it's best to keep as much ibuprofen out of her system. So for her, unfortunately, the only thing we can do for her is hot baths, rest, Epsom salts, and she does use BioFreeze. Now, I can't use BioFreeze. I have allergic reactions to it, but she does use BioFreeze, and her doctor has even prescribed her a topical cream that is like an ibuprofen. It's stronger. It's like a naproxen, I guess, but it's topical, so it's not like ingested in her system throughout her whole bloodstream. It's just kind of localized, and that is something that, those are the kind of the things that she does. Now, for Sydney deals with a lot of pain. She deals with, she's not had any full dislocations. I suspect she has some subluxations, but although joint pain is an issue, and joints are an issue with Sydney big time, she is one tough little girl. She very rarely ever complains. And when she does, I will give her ibuprofen, because honestly it's probably like maybe once a month. Or one of the things I taught Sydney was, and even Cole, is, okay, if you have younger children, this works. Obviously it doesn't work for Savannah because she understands and she gets it, but I will tell Sydney, a lot of times it's nighttime when she complains, and I'll say, okay, well, lay down and go to sleep. When you sleep, it rests and you'll feel so much better in the morning. And she will accept that, and she'll lay down and she'll go to sleep. There have been times, if she wakes up in the middle of the night, I will give her ibuprofen, because for it to wake her up in the middle of the night, it's obviously hurting her really bad. I have done the hot baths with her and things like that too. So those are just kind of some of the things that we do as far as that. This person said, advice on how to get EDS diagnosed. Okay, this was not an easy diagnosis for us. Now, growing up, I didn't know very much at all about my father's family medical history. Savannah has always had GI issues from the time she was 3 months old. If they get loud, I might have to move inside. But she always had GI issues. Tons of colonoscopies, biopsies, went through all that. They thought she had celiac at one point because she is asthmatic. A whole slew of things. It took years to get her diagnosis. And the only reason why we got a diagnosis, one, I never even knew anything about EDS. So I didn't even know to look in that direction. But two, it's a hard diagnosis to get. It is. So for us, my stepdad, he has a niece that has EDS. And that was the first time I had ever heard of EDS. So his niece, for his niece, she goes to a doctor a little bit distance from us, and so I transferred Savannah to that doctor, or all our children to that doctor, because as I looked it up, I was like, oh, this is what Savannah has. So we went to see this doctor, this pediatrician, and he agreed he thought she had it. Well, he sent us to the genetics doctor, and that genetic doctor said she had practically no muscle tone in her core. She was hypermobile, but she was still kind of on the line because we didn't have any, at the time, know of any medical history from family with this condition. You know, it's really hard to get a diagnosis if you don't have family history of it, unless you have the mutations. So she thought, honestly, that she had muscular dystrophy. We went through a whole slew of blood work and all that, and she thought she may have had an autoimmune disorder. We never got any answers, pretty much. Well, then my aunt reached out to me, and her son was diagnosed with EDS. Now, her son and Savannah's, as far as the GI side of things, is textbook of each other. So when she reached out to me and we got to talking and she really explained a lot of stuff to me, I was like, okay, this is the second time now somebody has said, okay, Savannah looks like she has EDS. So after that, at this point, Savannah's GI was really bad. You know, we were trying to figure out what's going on. She couldn't eat. She was extremely underweight. Sent us to Vanderbilt for a diagnosis again. So the first time we went to Centennial, which is the children's hospital here. This time we went to Vanderbilt because Vanderbilt was where my cousin was diagnosed with EDS. So we're like, we'll go back, we'll go there. And that's where Savannah's GI doctor was, and all that. So we're like, okay, we'll start out with there. So because at this point Sydney was having issues also, I took both girls. And we had the first, consultation with the genetic. And at this time, I didn't know the specific EDS because there's 13 different ones. I didn't know specifically which one it was my cousin had. So when we went, although I knew there was family history, it kind of was like there wasn't family history because I didn't know which one he had. Now, after I met with my aunt and she told me about her son, I found out that her daughters have it. At least one of her daughters has it too. And so I did then text my aunt, was like, hey, which one? But unfortunately, I was at the appointment, so I didn't hear back from her until after the appointment. But this specific genetic doctor said, yes, I believe your girls have EDS. Now with Sydney, they don't like to diagnose it until, what did they tell me? I think age 10. Because young children, toddlers, she was a toddler at the time. She was only like 2 or 3. Are automatically hypermobile. That is naturally how they are. But at this point, Sydney was having to wear braces. She was having walking issues and things like that. And so she was like, what I can tell you about Sydney is I'm not going to give her the official EDS diagnosis. However, if she sees a doctor, if you take her to the hospital or whatever, you let them know that she needs to be treated as an EDS patient because we believe she has EDS, although she's too young for an official diagnosis. Now with this appointment, they did do blood work to check for the mutations. There's one type, which is the type that my girls have, that they have not found the mutation or doesn't have one. So for them, we knew they didn't have any other form. However, we suspected and knew that they had hypermobility EDS, which is type 3. So at this point, I started having health issues more. So my doctor said, let's send you. They wanted to see Savannah back in like 2 or 3 months. They were like, let's set you up with them also to see them. So then we saw a different doctor. This doctor is the one that told me that I had hypermobility syndrome and that he didn't believe Savannah had EDS, only hypermobility syndrome. Well, I was quite upset with this appointment, and so I just straight up asked him, I said, if she was your child, what would you do? Because he told me EDS didn't affect the GI. I said, if she was your child, what would you do? I said, do I need to take her to the Mayo Clinic? Because that was the only thing I could think of. And he said, I wouldn't suggest Mayo Clinic for children. He hadn't had a very good experience with getting answers. So he suggested, however, that if Savannah was his child, there's obviously something going on. So he suggested me take her to a larger hospital. Now he had suggested either Memphis or Atlanta. So I immediately called Atlanta and was working on getting her there. But when I talked to her pediatrician, because her pediatrician believed she had EDS also, and originally that first genetic doctor sent him the diagnosis of EDS for both girls. So since he had that diagnosis, as soon as they said go see a larger hospital, when I mentioned Atlanta, he called me back and was like, no, I'm sending her to Cincinnati. Cincinnati specializes in EDS. They are the top connective tissue clinic in the nation, and they're like the second top children's hospital in the nation. And so that is kind of where we went. Once we got to Cincinnati, it was a very quick, yes, she has it. And when Sydney turns 8, they want me to bring Sydney there. So that is how we got a diagnosis. It took years. Savannah is now 13. She got her, let's see, she's been going to Cincinnati for 2 or 3 years. So yeah. So it was a very long process. I had to be persistent. You know, at this point, Savannah's weight was so low. She had developed POTS from the malnutrition. She was malnourished. Her heart wasn't doing well. You know, she was not doing well. She looked sick. I will find a picture. I'll post a picture in here the day she got her feeding tube. When we went to Cincinnati, our very first appointment, within 15 minutes, I was told she was getting the NG feeding tube, and within 30 minutes, we were in our hospital room. So I'll insert a picture here where she first got her NG tube. And you can see how sickly she is. Okay, so this is the same person that asked how we got it diagnosed. She said, my PCP says yes, but the rheumatologist says no, because I don't have stretchy skin. We actually don't have real stretchy skin either. That is one of the things that it is stretchy, but it is not stretchy in the form of like what you see with EDS. I would suggest finding another rheumatologist. I don't know if you're close to Cincinnati or be willing to fly out to Cincinnati, but when we went to Cincinnati, the very first thing that GI doctor said, although he, after looking at her, and he saw the original diagnosis of EDS, and then the doctor trying to say no, she doesn't have it, his first thing was, okay, I'm going to send you to the rheumatologist. The rheumatologist almost immediately said, yes, she has EDS. So just because you don't have stretchy skin doesn't mean that you don't have it. There are multiple things that go along with it. So I would just suggest either getting a second opinion or, I pray Cincinnati. If you can get to Cincinnati, that's where I suggest going. I will tell you there's a loophole to it. Cincinnati's EDS clinic only accepts certain states because they have such a waiting list. For us, we went to Cincinnati for GI issues, which then routed us to the rheumatologist in the EDS clinic. So there is loopholes to getting into the EDS clinic if you don't live close enough or if they don't accept your state.